Yeah.
I'm like, I have to go downstairs and mama's got to work. No, don't go downstairs. I'm like, you have no idea how lucky you are.
Yeah.
Some parents are
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Everyone has a Zoom link.
yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's like a book for like when we get older, you'll see like this generation of books like now where it's just going to be like, oh, do you want to read Everyone Has a Zoom Link? Everyone has a Skype date. And they'll be like, who are these books for? I'll be like, excuse me, they're for like people who had kids in 2020 and maybe for like 2025. That's the age. And then you're like 20 years old. You're like, do you remember reading Everyone Has a Zoom Link? I'd be like, no, I remember buying it for my kid. So ask them. And then they're 20 odd and they're just like, yeah, I remember reading my
Everybody
dad
has
reading
a
that to me.
Zoom link.
Yeah. Welcome to yet another episode of Tobin Tonight. We're here with Cerina Vincent. Cerina, my very first question for you is, what is your favorite color?
Oh, well, I have to say yellow.
Yeah, obviously. For people out there who like know who this
color.
person is, and maybe you're like, oh, why did he ask that question right off the hop? It's a little bit of an Easter egg because we are speaking to the Yellow Power Ranger, or one of many Yellow Power Rangers, we should say.
One of a handful of Yellow Power Rangers. I was the Yellow Power Ranger on Power Rangers Lost Galaxy in 1999. In the 90s, people.
Yeah, that is my favorite time.
But to answer you honestly, I mean, I do love yellow because it's happy and cheerful and bright and sunny and all the things. But my favorite color is, I have two, white and purple.
White and purple. Okay, explain that. Why white and purple?
I don't know. White, just, I love all white, all white. I have a child now, so it doesn't really work anymore. But before a child, just white linens, white everything, white curtains. It just feels so like clean and fresh. And maybe it's because the life of an actor is kind of chaotic. Like we're just so many words in our head all the time and wearing so many different hats. And I don't know why, and then purple is divine.
That's fair. My go-to is always pretty plain. It's blue. But if people start really picking at you, it's like I like a dark shade of blue, like the color of this background.
Yes,
but I also like a sky blue. But I like the combo of them together. I don't know why. It's just like a light contrast blue or a dark blue, and people are like, "Why?" I'm like, "Well, there's all different kinds of blues. You wanted to be specific about it, so let's go."
I love it. I love specifics. How about Mediterranean blue? Oh, I love a good Mediterranean blue. That's a good blue.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just sticking to like blues. Like, for example, like my phone case here has all like different kinds of blues.
Yeah.
The thing that's keeping all my podcasts together is a blue hard drive that's like baby blue. So I feel like people are going to be like, you're a little bit obsessed with blue. I'll be like, that's okay.
It is okay. It is okay. I realized for a while I was collecting a lot of purple. Like I had like purple luggage and a purple laptop case and a purple phone cover. And then I showed up and I was like, oh, I'm like that lady in all the purple. And purple puffy jacket. It's too much altogether. So I'm scaling back. I'm sure everybody's like, "What are we talking about? Colors?"
This is why they're called chats and not interviews, because you go all over the place. But when you say that, when you're talking about like collecting a certain color, my instant kind of go-to is watching Christmas movies, and they always have that like portrayed as the evil aunt that doesn't have a normal Christmas tree. It's all like white and crystal and silver, and I'm like, yeah. I would not want that aunt, even though I have a neighbor that was the same. She was the nicest of a person, but I was just like, you're not what I thought you would be, because I keep on thinking it's in my mind now that all white Christmas tree, all white. It's almost like you're the bad guy.
Or like have you seen like I saw this last Christmas, somebody had it was like a rose. It was like a dusty rose. The whole tree was like a dusty rose color. I was like, all right, that's interesting.
They're getting innovative, right? Yeah. So, congrats to them for being innovative. I want to ask you kind of to get really into the chat here is now there's a lot that we're going to cover. There's a lot that we're going to go all over the place with, but let's talk about obviously the book first. Everyone has a belly button.
Everybody has a belly button. I have a copy right here.
I want to ask you, because I know there's like a lot of topics. Like it's kind of interesting to me because when I was a child, and people are like, you still are, that's fine. But when I was growing up, there was like these different books had different messages, but like as a kid, as a child, you don't really, I guess, grasp it until you're older. Like there was this book that was like I will love you forever. Now I only know this because of the Friends reference, and Joey keeps on saying that's his favorite book. But I remember reading it as a child. But like as a child, you're kind of like, all right, mom, you like this book. But then when you get older, you're like, oh, I understand it now a
Yeah.
little bit more.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I guess what you're implementing in this book is obviously you're talking about a little bit about racial equality or
Mhm.
racial equality, about skin color, and telling everyone, like, it don't really matter what your skin color is. We all got something essentially that we can be proud of, or makes us who we are. But like I'm wondering, how do you get that across in this book? I know it's like, I feel like that's a difficult question, but
No, it's
I feel
not.
like you can answer this.
Yeah, I can answer this. So, it's a great question. Well, first of all, I'm pointing out that the differences, but also, but also our similarities. Like we are all the same, right? But our differences do matter. And I think that's like that's a bigger conversation about systemic racism and people that say that they're colorblind and all of that. I feel like I've learned a lot since 2020 and how I can be a better white person and understand what's really going on. But to answer your question about everybody has a belly button, I wrote this book the day George Floyd was murdered,
Oh wow, okay.
and I was at that time when we were watching the horror happen on the news. My son was 14 months old, and he was in his high chair, and I was feeding him, lunch or whatever. And it was the time when I was teaching him where his body parts are. You point to your nose, you say, this is your nose, say nose, belly button, eyes, toes. So you're going through their whole body. It's one of the first things you teach them, like their awareness of their bodies and themselves and where everything is. And so I was in that phase and of doing that. It's like what I was doing in that moment. And I was watching this horror go down on television. This is not horror. I've done a lot of horror. That's another
Yeah.
topic of the podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe. This reality, this devastating reality. And I thought, holy crap, what am I doing right now to teach my kid about skin color, equality, diversity, racism? What am I doing right now? And at that point, I was doing nothing, right? And I thought, well, what if we teach our kids what if we start the conversation about our differences and our similarities right now, right when you're talking them about their bodies? I also read that book from Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he talks a lot about like the Black body, and so here I am teaching my kid about his little body, and I thought, well, what if I did it? What if I did this? And I just made up this little poem. I was like, everybody has a belly button, everybody has a nose, everybody has a mouth, everybody has toes, everybody has skin. Some have black or brown. I went on through the rhyme, and he loved it. And I was explaining it to him and pointing to different colors in the house and blah, blah, blah. I put him down for a nap, and then I wrote the book, and it came out I love writing in poetry. And it was this really beautiful poem, and I just started saying it to him, and he loved it. He would say, mo, 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 mo belly button.
Yeah.
And anyway, and so here we are today, and now it's a book, and we have an incredible artist, and I want to talk about her. But that's sort of that's long-winded answer, but that's how I decided to do it, is start the conversation just as we start the conversation about your own baby's little body.
Yeah, I'm interested to kind of go a little bit in depth here, because I know it's weird. I know we're gonna go all over the place with this, and
Yeah.
hopefully, like I said, like some of these questions might be a little bit more like, because I just go with whatever comes up here,
No,
and
take your time. Yeah.
it goes just shoots, and then people are like, what is he doing? But like I know when I was growing up in the '90s, reading like books, or even like now where I have a niece and nephew, watching them grow up, looking at children's books, like I know that I'm a white male. And, I'm not going necessarily out of my way because I have a white niece and nephew to go buy like different colored books. It's just not instilled in my brain. But, the thing is sometimes you kind of go out, you got to go out of your way. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, I'm a person with a disability. So if I find someone that has a book about a disability or a child about disability, like we have someone in Newfoundland that wrote a book called The Autistic Puppy. Now, I'm not autistic, but the disability side struck in. So I was like,
Yeah.
good, let's get this book so that my niece and nephew can be like, hey, that kid in the class that you know that's autistic, here's a book that's like, I know it's a child's book, but the same point is you're understanding it and you kind of make them feel included because you can go to school then and say, actually, I don't know everything about your autism, but my uncle
Uncle,
gave me
yeah.
this book and we talked about it, and maybe that makes him feel included, maybe he doesn't feel as shy. Like it's all about kind of
That is exactly what I wanted. I
yeah.
don't know, are people gonna be looking at this podcast, or is this just for audio?
No, it's
But
lookable
okay.
too.
But, like,
Lookable.
I wanna talk about my artist, Zoe Hunter. It was important for me to find a woman of color and, to do the art, and so she did it. I wanted every baby to see themselves, but I also felt like, oh yes, I need to include everybody. Now, there are kids without toes, right? There are kids without elbows, right?
Yeah.
Potentially, right? There are. There's a page in the book, and I'll just read it. And if you can see this little girl in a wheelchair here, there's a page that says everybody is unique. Some are freckled, bald, short or tall. Some teach, build, dance, or play ball. Some wear glasses, have beards, are wide or thin. Some may cook or clean, be a doctor or twin. Some have wheelchairs or scars or special needs. Some may not see, and some may not speak. All the differences, all aglow, make everybody special like a rainbow. That's like the tagline.
Yeah.
So like it was important to me also to not just talk about skin color, but also I wanted every child to see themselves. The child in the wheelchair, the
Yeah,
child with
yeah, like and that's what I was kind of going for in this, because now you
yeah.
see more, I guess, people when they're writing books, when they're doing anything artistic, really, they're trying, like, I don't feel like it's forced, but they're trying to be more inclusive. They're trying to be like, all right, like, I know who I kind of want this to be towards, but I don't want this to be left out. Now, I know some people would say, oh, well, like, it's all because of culture now. And if you don't add them, then there are going to be people that say, well, there's backlash. But
See,
I don't think that way. I
no,
think it's just, yeah,
I agree. I disagree with that, and I think you're right. And
yeah,
I would say this: we have a much more conscious this generation of parents are
yeah,
much more conscious. Now, you don't have to be a parent to be more conscious, but I am a mom now. I'm a mother now, and I look at my kid, and I know he's white, and I know that like that comes with a certain level of privilege, and he's knock on wood healthy,
yeah,
and we are I think we're a more conscious, more empathetic generation, and we can put ourselves into the shoes of a mother I have a friend who's her 5-year-old is battling cancer. We can put ourselves in those shoes, and we do want to include everybody because all of our kids are all of our kids.
yeah.
Uh, this is the rest. There should be no separation. There really shouldn't. And I didn't, you know, I've always been sort of an empathetic person, but after becoming a mother, like your heart, when they say your heart walk is like outside yourself walking around, it's true. Like
Yeah.
I've just exploded with like so much love and empathy for every child. And like I remember when I first had my baby, I would just like hold him and like snuggle him and squeeze him and kiss him. And I thought, what if every baby got this much love?
Yeah.
Because they don't, right?
Yeah, it's like a tough kind of wheel to spin, I guess, at times, because you're looking at it from different perspectives, and like, yeah, there are people that can do that, and then there's people that really can't. It's like a line, and then you either cross the line if you do or you don't. Like, I know, not necessarily related to the children's side of things, but just with the disability, I
Mhm.
know with like I think it's mostly Canada, maybe the US as well, but like for someone like myself to try to find media jobs, like you as a kid, you're looking up to somebody for what
Mhm.
you want to do in life. And for me, I wanted to be in media, but I never had someone to really look up to. Like now I have like an invisible disability, so it's kind of hard to tell. But like for
Yeah.
someone in a wheelchair, there's no one here, let's say on CTV or CBC or NBC, that you're like, I see that person doing it, now I want to do it. You're
Mhm.
you're kind of going to be
You're
the first.
absolutely right.
And it's sad because even to this day, you would be the first, and someone is taking a chance on you. But I feel like this generation of kids that are coming up next with your books, with other books that kind of discuss all this, they might not feel like they'll go when they get older and be like, yeah, I read that book when I was younger. And they'll tell you their own story of like how it helped them get through something, or how like that made them be inspired to do this. Like, I feel like our generation didn't really have that.
We didn't, yeah.
We did, but like, because we understood that now, we're kind of like, oh, right, well, we don't want the next generation to be like that. So let's give them something.
Yes, 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 yes,
Right.
yes. Are you in a wheelchair?
No, I'm not in a wheelchair.
Okay.
But no, so my disability, yeah, because it's fair. People should know. It's like Sturge-Weber syndrome. So this right
I
here,
read
you
it.
can
Yeah.
kind of see it. It's like
Okay.
a birthmark. But when I was 12, I had like a stroke. So my whole right side just went numb. And like it's it's kind of a lot. Well, I'll get into a little bit of winded because this is
Oh,
your episode, but it's like
oh,
I was riding my bike one day. It just kind of like stopped. Like
oh my
right
God.
arm, right leg went, and I'm only like a block away from my house. But like up until this point, I didn't know what was going on. Like my parents know because they were like, yeah, when you were younger, you used to stare off into space, and that was what we called kind of a seizure. But like no one told me this. So this was my first thing of going like, did I fall down awkwardly? Is this like normal? Um, and then it only
Wow.
lasted about, I think, a week. So I got lucky because they did say it was going to be a lengthier process, but for some reason I got lucky. And I still kind of have them where they're episodes where I'll get a migraine. I'll know, okay, I got to relax. The right arm, right leg will go for 20 minutes, but I'm good. I'm fully functional the whole time. So it's not like I passed out, because some people think like Sturge-Weber or epilepsy, as it sometimes can be branched, is he's going to pass out. What the hell do we do? No, I'll tell you, hey, I'm having an episode, so I got to sit down for 20 minutes. You continue on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Interesting. Interesting.
yeah.
I just really interesting too, I guess, for your perspective of feeling like a totally healthy, normal kid for 12 years of your life. And
Yeah.
then after 12, now having the label of disability, I'm just imagining that there's things to like work through in that.
It's a tough climb, because and I'll try to relate this back into like your sense of like kind of a question here, but like I know for me, when I was applying for jobs coming out of school, like I never thought, even with the disability when I was 12, because what 12-year-old goes to school thinking like, yeah, I got a disability, this is going to be limited. Like I just felt like, yeah, okay, I had this thing. It's almost like, to me, I fell off a bike. You fall off bikes all the time, but we don't
Wow.
treat you differently. So I
Excuse me.
I went to school, graduated, like got a degree, diploma, and then I was like applying for jobs. And to me, and this is where it kind of comes a double-edged sword, is I would see people walk into university in a wheelchair with like a dog because they're blind, and I felt like I don't have that disability. I'm fully functional, so I don't need all these extra resources. So applying for jobs, I used to say, "Are you a person with disability?" I'd say no, because you don't see it. So I used to kind of count myself out as saying like, I want to get my job because of who I am, not because of the label of disability. But
Interesting.
now when I look at it, I kind of go, yeah, I'm a person with disability, because there are certain things that, yeah, I'm going to need help with along the way. Now, they're not major things, but it's kind of like weighing that spectrum, as if I needed extra time to read and you treat me like I'm a normal person, you're going to be like, man, all the rest of those normal people can
Right.
read. What's his problem? But then if you say, oh, he's a person with disability, he's actually doing really well
Yeah, yeah.
considering that. So then it's almost like I clicked, or I checked the tick mark to kind of protect yourself. And I
Yeah.
feel, so I feel like to kind of bring it back to your book in an aspect, like I feel like writing something like this for children, it's kind of letting them know, like, you're giving the check mark to them as saying like, it's okay to be a rainbow. It's okay to be unique. Like, just because you don't see that in someone else doesn't mean that you got to cross yourself out and saying, well, all right, well, I don't meet what they're meeting, so
Yeah.
there goes my color of my rainbow.
I'll have to show you right here. I would literally try to include everything and everybody. Only so much you can do in like a kid's book, but we have a page here about everybody has a birthmark.
Nice. Now
And
I feel included.
and yeah, because I think that, that everybody does. Some people have small birthmarks, somebody has big birthmarks, and that's a thing that like other kids can be cruel about, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And and so I thought that was important to point out, and also like all birthmarks are different, yet they're all the same,
Yeah.
and just again, it's like this book is a conversation starter about all of these things. If parents aren't talking about them, like our babies are sponges and they learn so much. And if
Yeah.
they can learn nose, mouth, eyes, toes, hair, they learn how to do all the things. Why can't in this moment also in those very first few months also learn about the differences in our skin color and
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it's kind of interesting because there's going to be, and this is where it kind of comes into the contrast side because there are going to be people like I'm hoping not, but there always is, even if it's a small amount of people that will come out and say like, let them be like they're 4, they're 5, they're 3. Like, why are you teaching this to them at a young age? Like, just let them kind of learn it over time. Well, I'm like, that's kind of yeah, there's aspects to that, but like I look at it and um I know John Oliver had a book about a bunny, but it was a gay bunny. And people were kind of like, is this like for adults? Is this a kid's book? And he was like, no, it's a kid's book to teach your kids that like, men can
It's
like
awesome.
men, women can women. And people were like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. It's like, all right, well, that's fine, I guess, for you, but
What
maybe
about all
just
the kids that are gay?
yeah,
That's
exactly.
gonna make them feel so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I
it's
think they've done research on this. Like, I don't know the research, but like I've read somewhere that they did research on kids and like preschool age kids and kindergarten age kids. And like by not doing anything, kids will grow up with a certain level of racism because
yeah,
they only see certain things in movies, certain things in books, certain things in toys, certain things at home, hearing their, conversations. So I think it is important to have all these conversations and and we are, right? Like
yeah.
we are. I mean, there's some, I don't know when this is going to air, but all this stuff with just came out about Texas, right? And in the US about uh you know them investigating homes with trans kids, which is just sick.
Yeah.
And so we need more people talking about the truth and what's real and protecting our children rather than making them feel more isolated and more alone.
It's kind of interesting to me because when you were talking about like, if kids are not exposed to it, obviously, like what do you expect? Like, I think there was a thing. Now John Oliver did a piece on it, but you can always find it on the internet too, where they asked a little white girl, like they had 2 dolls, and they asked her like which one was the bad doll, and she pointed to the black doll, and they
Mhm.
asked her
Yep.
why, and she's just like, because she doesn't look, she's like the least like me, and I was like, I don't blame it on the child. It's like, don't try to blame that on the mom, but I get it. Like, people want to point the finger at somebody. But I grew up here in Newfoundland where I'll be honest, like, I went to a school that maybe we had like 3 black people in it.
Mhm.
And I don't know if maybe people are out there now, like, you don't call them black people. I'm like, listen, I will ask them. They're okay with it. But like, at the same time, that's it. Like, that's all we had. So it's kind of like very hard to relate to what they're going through when there's only 3. But now I did used to come home and watch Full House compared to Family Matters. And I believe we talked about this with Cherry Moon. And it was interesting because there are kids out there, like when you watch Full House compared to Family Matters, very different. Very
Mhm.
different. Like
Mhm.
Full House, like rest in peace, Bob Saget. But like it's very kind of, I know they're both 80s, 90s related and they're a little bit cheesy in themselves, but Full House always ended with Michelle is okay. DJ's okay. Stephanie's okay. Where I watched a Family Matters episode where it ended with Urkel and Laura telling people to pass in their guns because there were school shootings going on in Chicago. I'm like, did they just go back to back? Like, did I just watch Full House where I leave thinking like, oh, the world is great, and then I watch Family Matters. I'm like, all right, there's a little bit darker side to this, but see, in your own mind, you start to then kind of think like, okay, you start putting things together. Where I know we've grown since then, but in my mind, I was like, oh well, yeah, that's black people and guns, great. But now when you get older and you see more shows kind of touch these topics, you also realize like, all right, you know what? I'm white, but it seems like a white male is a lot more dangerous sometimes to a woman, even if like, out in the public. And I'd be like, all right, you know what? That's fair. Let's make it equal, if nothing else. Like, let's,
Absolutely.
right. So, um, but that's kind of where I like where, books come into place where you get the positive messages, not always negative. Like there's stuff in Family Matters that made the white guy look like the ass. And I'm like, that's good. So now I take away from that where it's like, all right, yes, don't trust every white guy. The same, So I like that they go all over the place in topics, but sometimes when there are people out there that haven't watched both shows, there are people that strictly watch like white families, and then you don't see,
You don't see
your Jeffersons, your whatever, and then you're kind of like, how do I relate to that? You really don't, but you have to kind of subject yourself to it. Like I know I'm trying to learn French, so it's kind of forceful to try to learn French, but I know that I have to put myself in that shoe to eventually learn about it, learn about the culture. And that's kind of where I feel like our generation maybe is more open to it. And therefore the next generation coming through can be like, all right, they at least, included me in this.
I mean, I hope so, right? Like with everything that's going on in our world, like it would be nice if the racism and the systemic racism and the intolerance ended with us, and that we do have a more open, peaceful generation ahead. But I don't know. All those crazies are also having kids, and
Yeah.
so those crazies. Sorry guys, that's rude, but no, they're gonna raise kids with those opinions, and so I don't know. I just feel like it's all we can do is
try your best.
do our best. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I'm very careful. Like I don't want to be. I realize I'm a white person. Actually, growing up, I didn't think I. Well, I'm Italian. I'm Italian American.
Yeah,
So
that's
very,
yeah.
very connected to my Italian heritage. So I actually didn't think I was like. Not that I didn't think I was white, but for example, 20 years ago, I didn't read for the all American roles. I didn't read
Yeah.
for white girl roles. I read for they considered me ethnically ambiguous. And
Yeah. To check a box
so you
almost.
have to check box, right, as an
Yeah.
actor. So that's been like just interesting to kind of like think about now. But anyway, if we all just do a little bit better to guide our kids, steer our kids in the right direction, then maybe we can make a difference.
Yeah, I feel like it's starting like you got to be able to kind of see it or read it to really kind of implement it. And I do like that sometimes when you turn on a TV, it's no longer like, all right, you're looking at a TV show, and in the background, it's like, oh yeah, that's the black actor they cast, or that's the indigenous actor they cast. Now there are literally shows where the main cast is black or
Mhm.
indigenous or
Mhm. We're
Asian.
not just putting a black person in the background as like,
Yeah,
oh, an extra
like,
'cause
almost like, okay, well, like, we
oh,
checked
we
a
should
box there, like,
yeah, yeah.
like, it
It's
says
changed.
in the casting, you need to have one black person, you're like, "You, here,
Yeah.
done." Now it's almost like, "All right,
I've seen
we
it
need
change.
a family." Like,
I've
we're
seen it
yeah,
change.
yeah,
I've seen it change. I've been doing this for many years, 25 years. So we were auditioning before I had a cell phone, before there wasn't even cell phones. Like I was going, it was we were shooting on film, and it was like that. And the rules are different now, and that is good.
yeah, because it's like, I know you have the background for, say, like, studio production, musicals. I'm actually kind of fascinated about this. Now, I only probably would have been 5, but it was like, was it Miss Teen, uh, in
I was Mrs.
1996?
Out of Teen USA
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
1996. That's right.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when you go back and look at all that, like, I know those are like kind of accomplishments for yourself, but like when you look at bigger picture now, because I know we're gonna try to branch off the kind of the racism, whatever, like this topic, but I do find it interesting. But like when you look back at your career now and you see kind of where it's kind of changed, you look back now and you're like, I'm grateful that all this happened, and now that I can make my own kind of landmark with this, because I feel like if you were born in a different time frame, these things might have been a lot more difficult to kind of land.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, I just like don't really believe in regret. you know,
I do. No, I'm like kidding.
I feel so grateful for life in this life. I feel so blessed that I have figured out a way to carve out a path in this business and a career for myself. Like when I watched all the same shows. I would watch Family Matters and I'd watch Full House and Family Ties and Different Strokes. And I wanted to be on TV, but I didn't know
Yeah.
how to do that. Like, how do you get from your tiny, like, lower middle class home in front of the TV to on TV? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
You know? And I didn't know.
How do you go to Las Vegas to Los Angeles?
Yeah, how do you go?
Yeah.
What's interesting is that you brought up Miss Nevada Teen is because it was sort of a segue for me. It was sort of a segue. I wanted to enter that pageant, and my parents said no. They went out of town. I raised the money myself, and I bought a dress. I entered it, and I won. They were like, "It's rigged." Anyway, I won. I had never like done anything like that before. So then I had to go to Miss Teen USA, which is essentially like shooting a reality show. All 51 of us go um, live together to shoot the televised episode of the pageant.
Okay.
What's interesting is circling back to race is I believe the year before me, I could totally be wrong. And if there's a pageant expert out there, I'm sorry and I'm willing to be wrong. But I believe the year before me, there were like 0 Black girls that made it into the top 10. 0.
Oh, wow.
So my year, I think they were trying to be more inclusive, and which was great, obviously. And I don't know, a handful. It was split down the middle, right? Maybe not down the middle. Definitely more white girls than Black girls, but
Yeah.
there were more. It was more diverse. Oh my God. I saw up close. I lived with these girls. How racist some of these 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds were.
Yeah.
And it was shocking to me. It was shocking to me because I didn't grow up obviously thinking like that. And that was one of my first experiences with holy shit. Can I say that?
Yeah, yeah.
These girls are mean. I'm not going to single out any states, but there were a handful of states that had some not so nice things to say, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
So that I'll never forget that. That's not why I wrote Everybody Has a Belly Button, but the fact that you brought it up, that was like the beginning of me really seeing some ugly
yeah,
side
like
of someone.
it starts to get in your mind. Like I know, like just to kind of close this topic off to go
Yeah.
elsewhere, but like I know, like I said, you watching TV shows, like I'm in Newfoundland in Canada. So like I'm watching shows, but like most times I'm watching like a white family and I'm not exposed. Like only for I liked Family Matters because of Urkel. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't really exposed to it. So therefore, when you do finally get exposed to it, you don't know how to react. And sometimes that reaction you look back on and you're like, all right, that wasn't the greatest reaction, or I could have did better there, but like I wasn't exposed to it, where I kind of felt a little bit like, not that a level up, but I mean, I'm seeing, a show that's based on Chicago, even though I know it's filmed now in LA, but I'm seeing like, oh man, like this is what their kind of culture goes through. Now they could betray that the way they want to, but I'm like, okay, I can kind of relate to it. I'm not saying I'm in their shoes, but at least I can kind of be like, oh, okay, like I can see it. So therefore, by seeing it, I can now at least discuss it or ask someone. And I feel like that's a situation now where we're in too, where everyone is so easily offended. And it's like, I feel like if I went up to one of my friends that's Black and started talking about like Blackish or something, there's going to be someone out there that's like, dude, that's his show. Why are you talking to him about his show? I was like, I am asking him because I want to know. I don't want him to feel closed off that he can't talk to me about an issue that happens on a show. But there are still people out there like, yeah, no, stay in your lane. I'm like,
there's always someone,
yeah.
there's always someone to say something. I had to do, it hasn't aired yet, but I actually host a podcast with a pediatrician called Raising Amazing. And we did an episode about my book because the title is Everybody Has a Belly Button. And I chose the title Everybody Has a Belly Button because most people, if you're born,
yeah,
if one is born, most likely you have a belly button or you did.
Yeah,
Maybe you had a
I'm
surgery.
guessing someone said they were born without a belly button and that went down a road.
Yeah, like,
No.
I mean, like there was have to be a space for the umbilical cord to attach,
Yeah.
right? So, I chose very carefully, but it was not right off the bat. Someone was like, "I know someone without a belly button." I was like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
there's always going to be a hater."
It's
Yeah.
always it's over like anything small. Like I know for me to say, oh, I'm a person with disability trying to get in media, blah blah blah. There's gonna be another person like, well, I know someone has a disability and they're trying to get in the media. So do you feel like special? I'm like, no. If
No.
anything, let
Yeah.
me get in contact with him so we can work together. Like let's
Yeah.
figure it out. I want to ask you too, because I know you kind of went into a little bit about how you started this book, what made the process, but like I am always interested because I did not just start overnight thinking about me doing a podcast. Like that did not just come overnight where I woke up one day and I'm like, you know what? Let's do a Tobin Tonight podcast and then go back to sleep. So I want to ask you, like, over time, what made you decide to really write this book? Like I know you were saying about George Floyd and that kind of sparked, but like were there parts in between your career that you're kind of thinking like maybe when your child was first born that you were kind of like, I'm interested now, how do I go about writing this book and getting it out to people?
So, okay, what I said in the beginning is the God's honest truth.
Yeah.
I put my child down for a nap and I wrote the entire book and it was done. And I sent it around to people. And well, first of all, put a pin in that for a second. I wrote a book series in my 20s called How to Eat Like a Hot Chick, How to Love Like a Hot Chick, and Live Like a Hot Chick. I co-wrote it with one of my very best friends, Jody Lipper. We redefined the term hot chick. So it wasn't about looking a certain way, but about an inner confidence and beauty, women not competing with each other. They did they did well. We published them with HarperCollins. We were on the Today Show and all the things talking about it. And so like I have done books before. And at the time that I wrote this, I had just finished writing a bigger book for older kids that I was trying to sell. And it didn't sell. It was pandemic 2020. I don't know. Hopefully I can figure out a way to do it again. So I was already like writing. I have a kids TV show pitch. I'm writing horror movies. So I'm also a writer. I didn't ever think about doing a kids book per se, like kids, like baby book, except that when I read some of these books, I'm like, that's not that good. Like I'll read something and I'll be like, that doesn't really rhyme. You're stretching, you know? And so this idea just came to me. I wrote it and I just took the the next natural steps to see if I could get it published. And here we are.
Yeah. I feel like, you know what, anything in life, there are times where you're listening to like either a song or you're watching a movie and you're like, that's a stretch. Like I I know this is probably going to be pretty dated, but there is going to be a general audience out there that might understand what I'm going for. But like I come across on Instagram stuff that I relate to when I was smaller and I'm like, oh man, that really hits me in the feelings. But like there was one that was like, yeah, everyone gives Eminem credit for his rap career, but like, can we all talk about how T-Pain rhymed Wisconsin with mansion? And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, that don't rhyme. Where does he ever rhyme that? And then I have to go back and listen to the song, and I'm like, it's like I bought her a house in Wisconsin in a mansion. I'm like, no, you did that yourself. Like, I remember being small and listening to that song and trying that, and then being like, yeah, makes sense. He's so good. And then when I get older, I'm like, no, that's a reach. I'm like,
That's so funny. That's
yeah.
so funny. That sounds like me here, like reaching for. I've written a couple other books since this one. They're not published yet, but I want to do a whole series of kids books, and so I'm always like, does that really rhyme? It rhymes the way I say it. But, yeah.
Yeah. It's like when someone says,
I
like,
love Eminem, by the way. Love Eminem.
It's like when someone has like I think there's an interview with Eminem that says about orange, and he's like, yeah, it's like people says that the orange can't rhyme with that thing. He's like, yeah, it can. The orange, like the orange, and I'm just like, all right, Eminem, only you can get away with that. If some other person was on that talk show and I was like, I don't know, I like Wiz Khalifa and others, but if it was Wiz Khalifa going like, yeah, man, orange can rhyme, I'd be like, go away, Wiz, come on, what are you doing? But if it's Eminem, it's almost like, oh, genius, and I'm like, is it though?
He's a genius. He is.
Yeah.
He is.
But
He's figured out
there
a
are
way.
definitely times that he will say something and you're like, if it was someone else, if it was anyone else that didn't have
No,
his
but he
popularity.
makes it work. That's
Yeah.
the thing. Is
Yeah.
somehow he makes it work. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you, because I know talking about the book and you said that you wanted to write other books. Like, what other topics were you kind of thinking, or was this kind of going to be like a series in itself where it's like,
Oh no, this one, like I said, just came from that moment. I have another one called I Love You Up Up Up.
okay.
It's about all the ways that you love your child in like all up and down and far, near and far. So they're learning those things that you teach,
Yeah.
Um, it's not sold yet. And I just wrote one the other day about um um so missing you. Like there's a lot of parents out there that go away for their job. Like some people go to their job 9 to 5, they see their kids every day, right?
Yeah.
Like in the
Some go
morning and
for
the
six
night.
months.
Right. But sometimes like I'll get a job and like I've got to go away for a whole weekend, right? Or a whole week or something like that. And that's like really but then I'm there all the other time, right? All the
Yeah.
other times. So it can be very confusing. And I thought, well, this isn't just for actors and writers and directors. This is for police officers, and this is for men and women in service, and all kinds of parents that have to go away during weird times to work, and that everybody has to work. Everybody
Yeah.
has a belly button, and everybody's got to work.
There you go.
So
That's what you should do. Just have the everyone has, and then
yeah.
just continue on with that series. Like I was thinking in my mind as soon as we were getting the press release for this, I was like, everyone has a belly button. I was like, okay, that's interesting. But in my mind, I'm like thinking like, what's the next chapters here? It's like everyone has a nose, everyone has ears, and then it's
Well,
like, oh, yeah,
that's all in this one, but
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
right. Well,
yeah.
they're really just inspired by what I'm currently talking to my own child about.
Well,
So,
that's good. Yeah,
like
that
he gets mad now, like because everything's on Zoom, right? Or like
yeah,
I'm like, I have to go downstairs and mama's got to work. No, don't go downstairs. I'm like, you have no idea how lucky you are.
yeah,
Some parents are
yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah, everyone has a Zoom link.
yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's like a book for like when we get older, you'll see like this generation of books like now where it's just going to be like, "Oh, do you want to read Everyone Has a Zoom Link? Everyone has a Skype date?" And they'll be like, "Who are these books for?" I'll be like, "Excuse me, they're for like people who had kids in 2020 and maybe for like 2025. That's the age." And then you're like 20 years old, you're like, do you remember reading Everyone Has a Zoom Link? I'd be like, no, I remember buying it for my kid. So ask them. And then they're 20 odd and they're just like, yeah, I remember reading my
Everybody
dad
has
reading
a
that to me.
Zoom link.
Yeah, everyone has a Zoom.
Everybody has so many Zoom links in
Yeah,
their emails. Yeah.
yeah. It's like
That's
you have to attend this. I'm just like, you know
I
what?
remember my first Zoom. I was like, "Ooh, Zoom. What's
Yeah,
Zoom?
yeah,
That's interesting. Oh, how fun. Wow." And now it's like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. Everyone has a
time
team
out.
meeting. Yeah. I feel like for the very beginning of the pandemic, I enjoy working from home. I think it's like because I was in Ottawa and I wouldn't get to see my niece and nephew in Newfoundland, and then when I came home for a job, I'm like, good. I'm going to be here for at least I was thinking for like a year, and
Yeah.
then when it started to expand more into a year, there's a part where you're like, great, I get to see you grow up, but there's also a part of me that's like, but all my life is up in Ottawa. Well, like this is kind of affecting me, but yeah, great, I get to see you guys grow
Yeah.
up, but there is a part where I guess like 4 years from now, if you end up back in Ottawa or wherever, you're going to be like, you know what? Yeah, the pandemic sucked, but here's the benefit. If
Oh,
you
for
didn't
sure.
have it, like, who knows? You could have a 10-year-old nephew that's like, yeah, I barely talk to
Yeah.
Brian. Yeah. And then you're like, now it's like, I can tell you nearly his favorite hockey team, hockey player, favorite,
That's
like,
so
I don't know.
special.
So, yeah.
That's so special.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you've changed the course of their lives, like to have a favorite uncle,
yeah.
an
I don't
aunt.
know if I don't know. There's only like, so I've got two, yeah, I've got two older brothers. So I feel like I'm their favorite now because I'm home. But when the other one comes home from Ottawa,
Then he's
it's
gonna be like new
yeah,
and
and then
fresh.
I'm totally okay with it because I'm like, yeah, you get to be the favorite. And then like 10 minutes in, he'll be like, Michael, go downstairs. I'm done with you. And I'm like, wow, you lasted 10 minutes. I've been here for like 2 years and I've never said that to him. Like not like right away, maybe like, an hour later I'll say go away, but you lasted 10 minutes. Come on.
That's so
Like,
funny.
yeah. Give him something. I want to ask you also, I know we talked about the book a bit, but to kind of drift away from the book talk, like tell me some other things that you have that are interesting to you in the pandemic, because everyone has something that they've kind of dived into. Like I know I mentioned that I'm trying to learn French. I feel like I'm at the latter part of the pandemic where it would be nice to learn it at the beginning, but it's still something to learn. But like when the pandemic hit, were you one of those people that were like, "Oh, I have to accomplish something in a pandemic," or were you kind of like, "Oh my god, I get to like relax a little bit here. I don't have to do so many things." I know it's hard when you're a parent because it's almost like there's no, "Hey, I'm taking a break." It's like, "Mom."
Yeah, it's such a good question, and it's very specific for me because I was a new parent. So my child learned to walk during quarantine. So just when I got so my son turned 1 in February, and then in March, right, of 2020, we hit the
Yeah.
pandemic. So just when I got like good at like leaving the house because I had a 1-year-old, just when I got like good at like being a parent, like
Just
out
when
in
I
the world.
mastered it. Yeah.
Yeah, just when I was like, "Oh, I can do this. I can, like, put him in the car seat and, like, go to the grocery store and, like, pretend like I know what I'm doing as a mom," and, like, really all those things it stopped. So, so it was, uh, I think every parent struggled during the pandemic. Um, I like, he didn't get to, like when he started to walk, I didn't get to, like, take him on a playground or anything like
Yeah.
that. Like, all the things that you would normally do with a kid, we couldn't even go to the beach. It was all closed off. So, so I'm not answering your question well. I definitely I have, what's the word? Um, what's the word? I have mom brain. That's what I have. No, I have high expectations for myself. I'm an overachiever. So
Okay.
I always feel like I need to get a lot of things done and like accomplish a lot of things on any given day. So I definitely put that pressure on myself in the pandemic too,
So
and
how did like so
but
I
like
don't mean
I don't even know what happened. Like I don't even know if I did the thing. Like I don't know what I did. I don't know what happened in the last 2 years. That's what
yeah.
everybody wants to know.
Yeah. How do you like manage that? Because I'm interested. Because I find like I'm 30 odd, but like I always thought like, and I guess when you're younger, sometimes you have like these goals, and like I think when I look back at my goals, I'm like, you know what, it's reasonable, but I'm also like I also have to kind of calm myself down and be like, you know what, once in a lifetime that might happen. But I remember being like 16 in high school and telling people I want to be on SNL. Don't know how to get to SNL, but I want to be on SNL. I remember telling people I wanted to have a talk show and then not
We
remembering how
have
to
a
get, yeah,
hey,
like
listen,
but like not
we need to have
remembering.
a talk show. I want to be on SNL too. Can we
Yeah.
be on SNL together?
Yeah, let's go like ask some people. I don't know who's even on anymore, but let's go
Yeah, me
ask
neither.
them and be like, but
But I hear what you're saying, and that
yeah,
is, but this is my answer. As an actor, I live off of hope.
yeah,
Like, I don't know what the next job is. I audition so effing much every single week. I memorize so many pages of material and I fall in love with all these characters and I'm like, "Oh my god, if I book this show, holy shit, that's going to change my life. Oh
yeah,
wow, honey, if I get this movie, I'm going to be going here this month instead. Oh, no, didn't get that one. Okay.
yeah,
All right, this one I'm going to be here. Blah blah. Oh, we'll move to Hawaii. Blah, 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 blah. And then they know none of them happen, right?
yeah,
Because this is the part of the business as an actor that nobody knows. You don't know all the things that we read for that we don't get. So I
yeah.
live off of hope. And if I stop hoping, I'll die. Do you know what I
That's
mean? Like if I like
oh,
the day that
absolutely.
I stop hoping that like one of those big next things can happen is the day I can't be in this business.
Yeah,
So I have high expectations. I'm an overachiever and I believe I can do it all. Yeah, I do. Of course, I have this like insecure voice in me that's like, no, you can't, you suck. Like I think everybody has that. But
that's my parents. No, no, I'm kidding.
oh, but when you're tired and all the things, you're just like, no, I can't. And then you get a good night's sleep and you're like, no, yes, I can. I can do this. So I have really like high hopes and I thought I would be I thought I would have done many more things in my career by now. But then I look at my career and I think, wow, well, what I have done, like I did it,
Yeah.
all of it, just me, you know? I mean, it takes a village, but like um it really takes that hope, and it takes you getting up every day and not giving up.
I want
No.
to ask you because I like to talk to our acts or people that we have on about social media and like their perspective or how they view social media because like we live in a world now where I find it's about likes, comments, like, that necessarily it's not really much about content. But now you have a pretty good following on both your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But I just want to ask you, like, when you're on these platforms, my alarm went off. When we're on these platforms, uh, like, do you worry about that, or do you just more or less saying like, if I post this and like 5 people like it, that's great. If no one likes it, I'm posting it because the reason I bring this back is Ed Sheeran made a comment not that long ago where it's like when he sees people posting selfies and they don't get like 20,000 likes, they get deflated. But he's like, Instagram and that's supposed to be a promotional tool. So I'm like, I get what he's going for because I guess for me, I grew up in like the MSN age where
Mhm.
I log into MSN. If someone's like, you're an idiot, it's blocked. That's it. Done. Right. But now today, it's like 20 odd people that are strangers can come on and be like, this podcast sucks. You suck, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm just kind of like, whoa, like it's a wave. But I also have to remember that because I grew up in the age of social media, that just kind of comes off your back. Like, yeah, there are a few comments that you're like, ooh, that hurt, but
Mhm.
I'm over it. But you have kids today on TikTok that are like 10, and some random person will
Yeah.
say, you suck at dancing. I'm probably one of them. No. And then it's like that deflates them for their whole life. And I'm like, dude, it's one person, doesn't know you. You're never going to meet them. Just continue on with what you're doing. But like, how do you view your social media? Like, do you get hate mail and then go like, oh, I can deal with it? Or are you kind of like, why did you say that to me today?
So it's such a good question, and I'm just going to be totally honest. Well, I feel like it's a necessary evil, like social
Yeah.
media. I think it can do a lot of good, um, but I also think it's a huge waste of time.
Yeah.
I'm so aware of like just this of like the scroll and like looking through your phone. I'm so aware of how often we're doing that and all day long. And I'm extra aware of it because my kid is like, what? Hello, what are you looking at? I want to see.
Yeah.
And like we're missing life, right? We're missing like actual life. But it's it's a tool now in our
Yeah.
business. And like it does matter. And it does matter for actors of sort of like my caliber, I guess. Like I'm not an A-list actress. I'm a working actor that like has a fan base and has a following, but I don't know where my next job is, right?
Yeah.
So I'm definitely like I need to be in the game. And so I would be lying if I said if I post something, well, for example, if I post a sexy picture, it'll get 10,000 likes.
Yeah.
If I post a picture of my book, it'll get 300.
Yeah.
But that's also because of the algorithm, right? It's like there's this like algorithm, and like if I post a sexy picture, the algorithm knows all of my followers that like those kinds of pictures, and it sends my picture to their phone. They're not
Okay.
seeing my book. They're not looking at my book. If nobody knows this, you should know this. But if they're
Yeah.
not looking at my book and thinking I'm not going to like that picture,
Yeah.
they don't even get to see it.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that is where did you watch that documentary, The Social is it called The Social Dilemma? I think that's what it's called.
Oh, no,
Watch
I've
it.
never heard of that.
Oh my god, you have to watch it. It'll change your life because this is an algorithm, and like and it'll change the way you look at social media. It won't change your life. But so now I'm like when I'm like, "Oh, that's a bummer." It is a bummer that my
Yeah.
book picture only gets 300 likes. Why? I want people to buy my freaking book. Why? Because I wanna help, like, raise a generation of kids that aren't racist assholes.
Yeah.
So, but it's like I have to take a sexy picture with my book, and then
Yeah.
maybe, like, it'll get people.
It's
Does that
just
make sense?
yeah, yeah, no, I totally get it
So
because
I
like
think it's a necessary evil. I'm like I hope it goes away by the time my child is
yeah.
it is in middle school. I hope it just goes away somehow, and we can all get back to just, I don't know what the way it was.
I think you know what? It's interesting to me because when you bring up this conversation, like, um, I know for myself going through like Instagram and stuff, like now I'm older and I obviously depending on the field that I'm in, I look and see like a musical act or someone like yourself. And I'm like, yeah, that's interesting to me. Like I like that kind of conversation or
Mhm.
whatever. But like my go-to example, I guess, of this kind of stuff would be like, I think her name is Kaylee Coco. Is it
Oh,
Coco?
Keela Kuko, yeah, I love her.
Yeah, yeah. So like, I remember her on 8 Simple Rules being like that teenager that like I'm maybe I guess 14, 15, whatever age, but I'm looking at that and I'm like, yeah, I'm more attracted to Bridget than I am, the redhead. But like as I get older, I'm kind of like watching her on Big Bang Theory and I'm like, you know what? Good for her. She
Mhm,
got out of that whole character of being like the dumb blonde. And
mhm.
yeah, she's kind of that on Big Bang Theory, but you watch her develop over time. And you're like, now if I see her post something like I don't know, just say if she had a bad
The flight
relationship.
attendant, yeah.
Yeah, just say if she had a bad relationship, now she's in a good relationship. I'm like, good for her. Same with Britney Spears. It's like I grew up with Britney, but I didn't really dive into Britney's whole life. But now I do. And I'm like, I could care less now, Britney, if you post a bikini. Not because I don't think you're hot. It's just because I want to see how you are mentally. Like, how are you doing?
Well, that is
Yeah.
so cool, and
Yeah.
that's the beautiful piece of social media is that we
Yeah.
can be more our we if we want to, we can
Yeah.
share those pieces of ourselves. I'm still pretty private on social media. Like I don't talk about all the things,
Yeah, that's fair. You
and
can't
I
dive.
think,
You can't tell someone like share more with me now. It's like no, I'll share what I want to share. It's my social media.
yeah, I just recently started a Patreon for like my super fans, and like there I'm sharing more, and for some reason it feels like easier because I know they like
They're
me more.
there. That's
I
what
don't
they're
know.
there. Yeah, like that's what
They
they're there
want to
for.
know, you
Yeah.
know? I don't know. It's such a I do think social media just makes can make insecurities, um,
It
it
can make them more elaborate. Like I tell people all the time. Now I'm like I said, there's an audience out here that's younger. There's an audience out there older, but like you're not going to see people post their lows on social media. That's not what it's for. It's like if someone, it's funny to me because you can go and see a friend on like Facebook and they haven't posted for 3 months. 1 minute they're talking about, oh, I'm so happy I'm in a relationship. Then 3 months, it's like, oh, it's silent. And then next minute, it's like, bought a house. And you're like, okay, but in those 3 months, I'm not like trying to like make it mean, but I'm like, what happened that you didn't post? You were probably like, at a
no,
low.
but see, that's the thing. It's like,
Yeah.
no, like I haven't been on Facebook in so long. Like I my
I
my
know. I've been sending messages. No,
oh, you
no,
oh,
I'm like kidding.
um, I know I'll get like like angry text from like someone that's like, "Hello, you're ignoring me. Are you okay?" And like, no, I don't reach out to me via Facebook. That's like not the right way to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
But well, I don't remember what I was saying, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I think getting back into life is a really good thing. And
Yeah.
I think if we can figure out a way to use social media as as a tool that it is and use it for good, great. And then I think we need to all get back into our lives because we're missing it
Yeah.
scrolling. I'm missing it. I waste so much time on scrolling through shit that I doesn't matter,
Yeah.
you know? And and that and like I'm an overachiever and I hate myself when I don't get things done. So like I'm starting from a spot of trying to not scroll mindlessly,
Yeah.
and be more conscious of it. So I think that we are I actually think it's scary that we're in a generation of kids that are addicted to their phones.
We're just gonna call them scrollers.
Yeah, everybody
But
scrolls. That'll be
yeah.
the next one.
That's gonna do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Cerina Vincent for coming on to the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying thank you for listening and good night.